I was lounging in our living room, the one with the big windows that looked out over the garden, when Alex burst through the door. Mark, my husband of 27 years, was sprawled on the sofa, half watching some show on TV, half napping. Our lives were comfortable, to say the least. I was a senior exec at a jewelry firm, and Mark had his own construction business. We worked hard for what we had, and our country house was a testament to that. "Mom, Dad, I've got news," Alex announced, his eyes sparkling with excitement. He was our only child, the center of our world, and usually, his news ranged from getting a promotion at work to winning some local football match with his mates. But today, he had a different kind of glow about him. Mark sat up, rubbing his eyes. "What's up, champ?" he asked, using his pet name for Alex since he was a toddler. I straightened up, too, sensing this was more than just his usual updates. "What's going on, Alex? You look like you've won the lottery, or something." Alex's grin widened. "Better," he said. "I'm getting married." The room went silent. It was as if someone had sucked all the air out. Married? The kid was only 25, for heaven's sake. Mark and I exchanged a glance, both of us mirroring the other's shock. "Married?" I finally echoed, my voice higher than I intended. "To who? When did this happen?" "Yeah, mate," Mark chimed in, his tone laced with disbelief. "You've barely been dating anyone long enough to, get married." Alex, unfazed by our reaction, beckoned to the doorway. "Come in, Emily." That's when I saw her for the first time. Emily was pretty, no doubt, with a smile that could light up a room. But something about her didn't sit right with me. Maybe it was the way she looked at Alex, like he was a prize to be won. "Mom, Dad, this is Emily," Alex introduced her, proud as a peacock. "We're in love, and we've decided to get married." "Nice to meet you," Emily chimed, her voice sweet, too sweet. "I've heard so much about you both." Mark stood up, offering a hand. "Well, this is a surprise. How long have you two been?" 6 months, Emily answered, squeezing his hand gently. 6 months? I repeated, my mind racing. 6 months and now marriage? It didn't add up. "Alex, can we talk?" "Not now, Mom. We're here to celebrate," he said, wrapping an arm around Emily. "We're getting married, and that's final." I bit my tongue, wanting to protest, to scream that it was too fast, too reckless. But I held back. This was my son, and if he said he was happy, then who was I to argue? "Okay," I said, forcing a smile. "Let's sit down. You must tell us all about it. How did you two meet?" As they recounted their story, something about a shared project at work leading to late-night dinners and weekend getaways, my mind wandered. It wasn't just the haste of the wedding that bothered me. It was Emily. She was too polished, her story too rehearsed. And then there was the timing. Just last month, we'd bought Alex a brand new car, a congratulatory gift for his promotion. And now, suddenly, he was getting married? The dinner went on, with Emily sharing more about her life, which, conveniently, didn't include any family of her own. "I'm an orphan," she said at one point, a perfect touch of sadness in her voice. "Alex and his family are all I have now." Mark and I nodded, offering sympathetic smiles, but alarm bells were ringing in my head. This felt off. Way off. After dinner, as Alex and Emily left, promising to keep us updated on the wedding plans, Mark turned to me, his expression grave. "You think what I'm thinking?" he asked. "That this is a mistake?" I replied. "Absolutely. But how do we tell him? He's smitten. We need to talk some sense into him, Lena. This is moving too fast. It's not right." The weeks following Alex's bombshell announcement were a whirlwind of emotions and, frankly, a growing pile of doubts. Mark and I had hoped our initial shock would fade, that we'd get to know Emily, and all our worries would prove pointless. But that's not how it panned out. Not by a long shot. One evening, Mark and I were sitting at the kitchen table, papers spread out between us, bills, some of Alex's expense reports he'd asked me to look over because, well, old habits die hard. That's when it hit me. "Mark, have you seen this?" I asked, holding up a credit card statement that was higher than the Empire State. "Since when does Alex spend like a man with a hole in his pocket?" Mark leaned over, his brow furrowing as he scanned the numbers. "What the hell is this? $5,000 at a fancy restaurant? And what's this, another four on jewelry? Since when does Alex buy jewelry?" We knew we had to talk to Alex, get some straight answers. So, we invited him over for dinner, a casual affair, but with the intent to dig a little deeper. Emily, conveniently, had other plans. "Alex, son," Mark began, passing him a beer and taking a seat across from him at the table. "We've been going over some of your expenses. Mind explaining some of these charges?" Alex took a sip, his face the picture of innocence. "What charges?" "The $5,000 at La Table d'Or for starters," I chimed in, trying to keep my tone light, not wanting to sound like I was accusing him of anything. "Oh, that," Alex laughed it off. "That was for Emily's birthday. Wanted to do something special, you know? Special's one thing, but this?" Mark gestured to the statement. "This is nuts, Alex. And there's more. Jewelry, clothes, spa treatments. It's like you're bleeding money." Alex's demeanor shifted, a slight edge creeping into his voice. "Look, I know it's a lot, but Emily's worth it. You'll see. Once we're married, things will settle down." "But, Alex," I pressed, "doesn't it seem a bit fast? You've only known her for 6 months. And all these expenses. It's not like you." He stood up then, frustration evident. "I can't believe this. I thought you'd be happy for me. Emily makes me happy. Why can't you see that?" "We do, son," Mark said, standing to put a hand on his shoulder. "We just want to make sure you're not getting taken advantage of." Alex shrugged off his hand. "I'm not a kid, Dad. I know what I'm doing." With that, he grabbed his jacket and left, leaving us with more questions than answers. As we prepped for bed, thoughts of how to protect Alex swirled in my head. But then, another curveball hit us. Alex called, his voice a mix of excitement and nerves. "Mom, Dad, Emily's pregnant. We need to speed up the wedding." That news hit like a freight train. Pregnant? Now? It explained the rush, but it piled on a ton more doubts. The wedding wasn't just fast-tracked, it was shot out of a cannon. Between the shock announcement and the big day, time seemed to warp. The preparations were a blur, each day melding into the next under the weight of organizing what was shaping up to be a lavish affair, thanks largely to Emily's modest wishes. One evening, as Mark and I reviewed the final guest list and the mountain of bills that had piled up, the reality of it all hit me like a ton of bricks. "Mark, this is insane," I said, shaking my head in disbelief. "We're bleeding money left and right. This wedding, it's like we're throwing a royal bash." Mark, ever the calm in my storm, sighed deeply. "Lena, what can we do? Alex is dead set on this, and with the baby on the way. We've got to support him." "Yeah, but at what cost?" I snapped back, frustration boiling over. "It's not just the money, Mark. It's this whole rush job. It doesn't sit right with me." Before we could spiral further into our debate, Alex called, excitement brimming in his voice. "Hey, Mom, Dad, everything's set. This is going to be the best day ever." I forced a smile I hoped he could hear over the phone. "That's great, honey. We're so happy for you." The day arrived in a whirlwind of activity. The venue was nothing short of breathtaking, a testament to Emily's taste for the finer things in life. As guests began to fill the seats, Mark and I took our place at the front, our smiles plastered on, ready to welcome the onslaught of well-wishers. Emily floated down the aisle like a vision, her dress a masterpiece of lace and sparkle. Alex looked on, awestruck, and for a moment, my heart softened. My son was happy, truly happy. Maybe I had been wrong about Emily. The ceremony was a blur of vows and tears, mostly from Emily's side, given she had no family present. The reception kicked off with the usual pomp, speeches dripping with sweetness, and a dance floor that beckoned even the most reluctant. As Mark and I made our rounds, greeting guests and sharing laughs, I caught snippets of conversations that set my teeth on edge. "Did you hear? The whole thing's on the parents' dime," one distant cousin whispered, not so discreetly. "Quite the fairy tale, huh? Wonder how long till the clock strikes midnight," another quipped, sipping on a cocktail that probably cost more than my first car. I brushed off the comments, focusing instead on making sure everyone enjoyed themselves. It was during one of these rounds that I overheard a conversation between Emily and a group of her friends, tucked away in a quieter corner of the venue. And then I told him, if we're going to do this, it's got to be big. Go big or go home, right? Emily was saying, her laughter light and carefree. One of her friends chimed in, "Girl, you landed a gold mine. Play your cards right, and you're set for life." My heart sank. There it was, the confirmation of my worst fears, laid bare in a few careless sentences. I wanted to confront her then and there, demand she explain herself, but Mark caught my eye, shaking his head slightly. "Not here. Not now." Post-wedding life settled into a rhythm of sorts, but not the kind you'd hope for. The bills kept coming, each one a stark reminder of the lavish affair that was Alex and Emily's wedding. But it wasn't just the wedding expenses that had me on edge, it was the continuous drain on the account we'd set up for them, supposedly for starting their life together. One evening, as Mark and I were going through our finances, I came across the latest statement for Alex and Emily's account. My heart sank as I scanned the list of transactions. "Mark, look at this," I said, my voice tight with frustration. "They're burning through money faster than we can count. Spas, designer boutiques, high-end restaurants. This isn't starting a life, it's living like there's no tomorrow." Mark took the statement, his brow furrowing as he read. "This is madness, Lena. We were supposed to help them get on their feet, not fund a never-ending honeymoon." Feeling a mix of anger and concern, I decided it was time for a heart-to-heart with Alex. I invited him over, making it clear it was a mother-son chat, no Emily. When Alex arrived, he looked happy but tired, the weight of his new life etching lines on his young face. "Alex, we need to talk about the spending," I started, not wanting to beat around the bush. "You and Emily are going through money like it's water. This isn't sustainable." Alex sighed, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. "Mom, we're just enjoying life. Emily's had it tough, you know that. I want to give her the world." "Enjoying life is one thing, Alex, but this is excessive. You're not just spending money, you're wasting it on things that don't matter. What about saving for the future? For the baby?" But before I could press further, Alex dropped a bombshell that shifted the ground beneath our feet. "Actually, Mom, about the baby," he trailed off, looking anywhere but at me. "Emily had a miscarriage." The words hit me like a physical blow. Not just the sadness of the loss, but the timing, the convenience of it all. "When? Why didn't you tell us sooner?" I asked, my suspicion struggling against my sympathy. "It happened a few weeks ago. Emily didn't want to make a big deal out of it. She's been struggling. Struggling or not, something didn't add up. The more I thought about it, the more the pieces refused to fit together. Determined to get to the bottom of it, I decided to pay a surprise visit to Alex and Emily's place the following week. What I found was a scene straight out of a luxury magazine shoot, not the home of a couple supposedly grieving and tightening their belts. The music was soft but upbeat, the apartment spotless and filled with new, expensive-looking furniture. It was Emily's voice that drew me in, floating from the bedroom where she was on a call, unaware of my presence. "Yeah, babe, don't worry. His folks are eating out of my hand. We'll have the rest of the money soon." This fool doesn't suspect a thing, she was saying, her tone light, almost giddy. My blood ran cold. His folks? This fool? Was she talking about Alex? About us? I stood there, frozen, as Emily laughed again, her words a knife twisting in my gut. Just a little longer, and we'll be set for life. No need to rush the divorce. I'll milk this as long as I can. Rage and betrayal swirled inside me, a toxic mix that threatened to spill over. I wanted to storm in, confront her then and there, but something held me back. This needed to be handled carefully, strategically. I left as quietly as I had arrived, my mind racing with the implications of what I'd just heard. Mark needed to know, and we needed a plan. Emily was playing us, and it was time to turn the tables. After the revelation at Alex and Emily's, Mark and I knew it was time to get serious. We couldn't just sit back and watch as our son's life got dragged through the mud by someone who saw him as nothing more than a payday. So, we did the only thing that made sense at the time, we hired a private detective. The detective, a no-nonsense guy named Joe, came recommended by a friend of a friend who had been through something similar. He had a reputation for being discreet and getting results, which was exactly what we needed. Mark and I sat down with Joe in our living room, the air thick with tension and desperation. I kicked off the meeting, trying to keep my voice steady. Joe, our son's wife, we believe she's not who she says she is. Joe nodded, jotting down notes in a small pad. I see this more often than you'd think. What makes you suspect her? Mark took over, detailing the extravagant spending, the suspicious behavior, and the overheard conversation that had set off alarm bells. Understood, Joe said, closing his notebook. I'll start with the basics, dig into her past, and see who she's been associating with. It might take some time, but we'll get to the bottom of it. The investigation was slow, each day dragging by with no word from Joe. It was like waiting for a pot to boil, knowing that what we found might scald us. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Joe called, asking us to meet him at his office. First off, Joe began, his expression grim. You were right to be suspicious. Emily's real name is Clara. Emily was an alias, and she's got a history of targeting wealthy men. My stomach twisted at his words, a mixture of vindication and heartbreak. What about her accomplice? I asked, dreading the answer. Joe slid a photo across the desk, showing Emily, Clara, with a man we'd never seen before. This is her partner in crime, so to speak. Been working together for years. Seems your son was their latest mark. Mark's jaw clenched, his anger palpable. Can we go to the police with this? It's enough to start, Joe confirmed. But there's more. They were planning to clean out your son's accounts, then move on to the next target. There's a trail of victims. The room spun as the implications sank in. Our son, the latest in a line of men duped by a pair of professional con artists. It was almost too much to bear. When we arrived home, Alex was there, waiting for us. His face lit up when he saw us, unaware of the storm about to break. Mom, Dad, what's up? Everything okay? He asked, noticing our somber expressions. Mark and I exchanged a look, then, with a deep breath, I began the hardest conversation of my life. Alex, we need to talk about Emily. As we laid everything out, the evidence, the photos, the lies, I watched my son's face go from confusion to disbelief to heartbreak. He was silent for a long time after we finished, the weight of the truth crushing him. Finally, he spoke, his voice cracked with emotion. I can't believe it. I trusted her. Loved her. We know, son, Mark said, putting a comforting hand on his shoulder. But we're going to get through this. Together. The days after the truth came out were like walking through a storm. I went to the police, my heart heavy, but my resolve firm. The evidence we provided was more than enough. Emily, or Clara, as we came to know her real name, was arrested along with her so-called accomplice. Watching them being taken away in handcuffs, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. relief that we had stopped them, and sorrow for what my son, Alex, was going through. The confrontation with Emily before her arrest was something out of a nightmare. She cried, pleaded with Alex, claiming her love for him was real, that I was trying to tear them apart. Her tears might have fooled him once, but not anymore. Please, Alex, you have to believe me. I love you. Your mother, she's trying to get rid of me, she sobbed, clutching at his hands, desperate. Alex looked at her, his face hard and unreadable. Love? You call this love? You've been lying to me since the day we met. There's no us, Emily. It's over. Her pleas fell on deaf ears. The betrayal was too deep, the lies too many. Alex filed for divorce, cutting whatever ties that bound him to the woman he thought he knew. The trial was a blur. Emily and her partner were found guilty, sentenced to a short but definite term behind bars. It was justice, but for Alex, it felt hollow. The woman he had loved, the life he thought they were building, it was all a lie. After the trial, our home was filled with a heavy silence. Alex was a shadow of himself, lost in the what-ifs and the betrayal. We tried to reach out, to help him through it, but the hurt was too deep. One evening, I found him sitting alone in the living room, staring at nothing. Alex, I said gently, taking a seat beside him. You know, it's okay to feel lost right now. What she did, it's unforgivable. But you're not alone. We're here for you. He nodded, his eyes moist. I know, Mom. It's just hard. I thought I knew her. I thought what we had was real. It was real to you, and that's what counts. She made her choices, and now she's facing the consequences. But you have your whole life ahead of you. This is just a chapter, not the whole story. Alex leaned back, taking a deep breath. Yeah, I guess. It's just hard to see the road ahead right now. Take it one day at a time, I advised, squeezing his hand. And when you're ready, we'll be right here to help you rebuild, to find your path again. Mark joined us, wrapping an arm around Alex. That's right. We're family. We stick together, through thick and thin. Slowly, very slowly, Alex began to find his footing again. The pain and the betrayal didn't disappear overnight, but with each passing day, he started to look forward, to think about his future, not just the past he had lost. 2 years had passed since the trial and Emily's sentencing. Life was slowly finding its way back to some semblance of normalcy, or at least as normal as it could get after the storm we'd weathered. Alex was doing better, focusing on himself, even starting to talk about going back to college. It was a slow healing process, but he was getting there, with us by his side every step of the way. Then, out of the blue, the phone rang one evening. I answered, not expecting anything out of the ordinary. Hello? Is this Mrs. Lena Thompson? The voice was hesitant, almost timid. Yes, it is. Who's calling? I asked, a sense of unease starting to curl in my stomach. It's Emily. I mean, Clara. My heart skipped a beat. After everything that had happened, hearing her voice was the last thing I expected. What do you want? My voice was cold, harder than I intended. I'm in trouble. I need help. I have nowhere else to turn, she said, desperation seeping through her words. And you thought to call here? After everything you've done? I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. I know I have no right to ask, but I'm alone, and I'm pregnant. For real, this time. The news hit me like a punch. Pregnant. The audacity of her calling us, after the lies and the pain she caused, was astounding. Listen, Clara. You made your choices. You have to live with them. As for your situation, I suggest you find help elsewhere. There are places, agencies that can offer assistance. But I thought maybe, after everything, there could be a chance for forgiveness. I really did love Alex, you know. I sighed, a mix of anger and pity washing over me. Forgiveness isn't mine to give. And as for Alex, you lost the right to even mention his name. You need to move on, Clara. Find help, but don't call here again." There was silence on the line, heavy and thick. Then, a quiet, "I understand. I'm sorry." And she hung up. When I told Mark and Alex about the call later, Alex's reaction was one of quiet contemplation. "I hope she finds the help she needs," he said, and that was all. No anger, no bitterness. Just a hope for a better path for someone who had caused us so much pain. It was a testament to how far he had come, how much he had grown. And in that moment, I knew that we were going to be okay. Life would move on, and we would grow stronger from the trials we faced.